everyone. Christine Lozano here. Thank you for joining us on Why with Christine. Before we start, I want to give a shameless plug on my viperroomphotos.com website, viperroomphotos.com. You see it right down here. Go ahead and click on that. I have a book for sale and also individual prints if you're so inclined. This is the Viper Room during the heyday in the 90s, 1995 to 2004. Rare, never before seen photos when I was the in-house photographer for the Viper Room when Sunset Boulevard was the place to be. All right, thank you. Enjoy the show.
And what sign are you again? What's your sun sign again?
My sun is okay. My sun is Aries, my rising is Taurus, and my moon is Cancer.
Okay, knew you were Aries sun. Okay, got it. Okay, got
Yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah.
So this is
I'm
good
not.
for you. Okay, and your
I'm
moon's
not.
Cancer.
I'm not stubborn at all. It is so good to actually meet you in person, sort
Yes.
of. This is Tish Aitken, and I have known Tish through the internet wise, I guess you would call it, for, do you remember what year it was? Was
I
it?
would say it's about 3 years or four, maybe. It's kind of maybe during the pandemic or a little bit after, I would say.
Yeah, that's what it was. And I started watching you on social media. And one of the things is just, I love how detailed you are, and just how you don't just be, you're not just sort of flippant about what you say. And so, and it always, and one of the things during the pandemic, just things that will catch your attention is sort of hard because that's all you get to do is either watch TV or on the internet or, maybe God forbid go outside and exercise. But so the way that you just said everything is amazing, and I just listened to it, and that's where I learned about the different rising moon
Oh,
houses,
wow.
Yeah. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah. So I was just like, okay, and actually, and you know what you're talking about, and you just drew me in, and the energy that you have and that you put forth, and you know because some people they just seem sort of comical, if that's like it's like a shtick, you know what I mean? And I didn't get that vibe for you, and that's what I liked. But where where are you from? Where are you at right now?
Well, I am not like you. I'm not where we were a few, well, I was here already, but you were in LA when we first met.
Yeah.
But I am I'm a born and raised New Yorker from Manhattan. And so I can say I'm a real New Yorker. And I moved a year before the pandemic broke out because just like LA, if you're in the arts, life was getting much more expensive to live. And many people I know had already left the city. And so I finally moved out. I'm actually in South Jersey, but I'm 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia because for me, I had to live near a city because I don't even drive. So I'm used to, so we have beautiful, we're pretty close to a lot of things, but we're right outside of Philadelphia, which is great. So that's where I am now.
Wow, so you got Philadelphia, New Jersey, and New York. You can just
Yeah, I'm near New York too. So I go to New York like about once a month or so. I don't go as much as I'd like, but yes, absolutely. I haven't lost the New York at least. And Philly, I'm getting to know a new city, which is great too. Yeah.
wow, that's amazing. So, what we do here, I sort of start with it, like how I get to know you, which we talked about, and then I always ask everybody, no matter what you do, is that infamous question: what was the first movie you saw in the theater, and does it still hold up?
Well, okay, so I will admit this friend of mine was coaching me, and my cat's going to jump behind me, so I can't do much about that right now. But and he might be sweet if he comes on. But my friend was joking, and he was saying to say to you, "Goodwill Hunting." He didn't want me to date myself, you know what I mean? So then leave it to him. Okay, not my friend here, but another friend of mine said, which it was not Goodwill Hunting. Okay, but but I will say it was a Clint Eastwood movie. I don't know which one because my parents would actually let me go to the movies. I lived in Yorkville, so 86th Street was right a block over. So there were movie theaters there. And New York was at that time, believe it or not, you could it was kind of safe a little. Well, it wasn't, and it was, but a kid wouldn't do that now. Wouldn't go to the movie theater alone. And I was really young, but I don't remember which Clint Eastwood, but I remember just going off and liking him. I think Sandra Locke was in the movie. But I will say, in answer to your question about something that hasn't held up that I do really like. I'm a New Yorker, but I never saw The French Connection, and obviously Gene Hackman just passed away, who is an Aquarius, and Pluto's now an Aquarius, but he was obviously the French Connection really launched his career, and that's a real New York story, and it's based on a real story. And that's a really bygone New York. That's really of another era. So we were saying that after the movie, and I hadn't really read the questions yet of what you asked me, but would that hold up now? I don't know. This with everything the way it is. I mean, obviously, also it's a thriller and stuff. Some of it's exaggerated, but it's a beautiful movie showing what New York used to be. You know.
Yeah, yeah. That's like a lot. Well, even like what's that? Midnight Cowboy.
Great
Stuff like
movie.
that. Yeah, those. I was in New York for 4 months back in the early '90s, and it was just starting to get commercialized a lot.
You
I
saw
mean,
the tail end of the cool New
yeah,
York. You did.
very tail end, yes. And I mean, and it's sad because I know a lot of New Yorkers there that are just like, dude, where's this? Where's the style and the taste of what New York used to be? And that's everywhere. That's even in LA. If you go to Sunset Strip right now, it doesn't look anything like it was when I worked there in the '90s. It's completely there's a lot of Chase Banks and there's a lot of condos.
Yep. Yep. You're right. And I know, like me, you didn't do it right before the pandemic, but you also left LA for the same reason like a lot of creative people, because places like LA and New York, they're always transient cities. They've always been from day one. But back like when I was growing up, and this is the astrology too, because we have to look at the fact that when you and I met, there were a lot of points in Capricorn, and the eclipses were in the Cancer Capricorn axis, and there was a total solar eclipse in Cancer, which was at the world point, meaning hitting everybody. And there was a mass exodus. People who were going to LA, going to all sorts of wild places you would never have thought. And like a lot of my clients and friends in LA left. New York had already left a lot of them. LA is more spread out, so you could find cheaper places nearby to live at the time. But just the same way, San Francisco, you can't. I mean, I remember San Francisco at the very tail end of when it was cool, also, like in the very early 90s, late 80s. It's not like that now, So all the big cities, and I think we're seeing change in lifestyle. You're also seeing that you can, now especially whether we like it or not, like we're saying we're meeting virtually. We want to meet in person someday, but the idea is that in reality, you can work and be a creative person. We don't have to live in LA or New York to do what we're doing. We want to still go to those places, but sadly, we can't necessarily afford to live in them. And so there's a big change in lifestyle. And with Pluto and Aquarius, the way we earn money is going to be very different. So, you know.
And I think it's a universe sort of saying that to a lot of people because a lot of stuff is leaving LA right now. I mean, about the fires we just had,
I was
and
there
also.
when it broke
Oh
out.
yeah, you were. That's right, you were. I remember that. Yeah, and you're like you landed, and you're like, great, this is amazing, great. But and then I was there walking during the strikes, and
Mm,
that didn't do us any favors. So
mm-mm.
and the reason why I had to leave is because I had a place for 23 years, and they tore it down to build condos.
Which happened a lot in New York. And again, you guys, in a lot of ways, I think LA and New York mirrors that because there were so many places are being turned, and they're also destroying beautiful landmarks for things too in both places. Or these, it's true. But change is inevitable. And I think the thing too, we were seeing the very end of Capricorn, and at one point when the pandemic broke out. We had an unprecedented amount in Capricorn. We had Saturn and Pluto. Saturn is karma and structures. Pluto is death and regeneration, but they met up also at the world point, which was at that time 22 degrees of Capricorn hitting all of us. And many structures, ways we do business came down forever. The metaphor to me was what had happened in Notre Dame in 2019, rather, 2019 was luckily it didn't come down, but the, scaffolding, the repair, same thing for us, in the world. And there was mass death, but not just of lives, of ways of doing business, of ways of living, where people live, lifestyles permanently done, so, and creating new things a lot. I mean, I actually do like where I am now. I had to acclimate. Initially, I felt like it was a composite of Green Acres and Ozark, depending on my
Oh
mood.
my god. So,
But no, but it's actually, but I meaning that I didn't know what I was getting into, and it's a great place, and I'm near Philly. I've got culture near me, and also I've got beauty near me, and it's nice to have tranquility,
mhm.
which, we're in the cities, we don't realize that as much.
And that's kind of where you can say I'm getting acclimated to where, because I'm where I was born and raised, and it is
And where are
complete.
you?
I'm in El Paso, Texas.
Okay.
So I'm at a border town. I haven't been here in over 30 years. I lived in LA more than I lived here. So when I was 18, I was like, I'm out of here.
Yep.
I lived in London for like about a year, and then from London, I just lived in LA. So
Wow, how
I
cool.
I don't know anything like about here. So I'm and trying to, because if I'm honest, trying to get out of that LA thing, just because it's not LA, and it's just like, okay, it's slower, but it does have its pluses and but whatever. That's what I'm sort of because
It took, when did you move exactly? What date or what time frame did you move?
it was last year. I arrived here on February 14th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man. So it was your Valentine.
Yeah, well,
Okay. Yeah, I
that
know.
describes my love life right there. Yeah, it's basically a freaking. But one of the things is like, because I've been so spoiled by LA weather. I don't know if you guys get this in the East Coast, but we get the alarms for storms, or like in LA, you get it for earthquakes. And I'm sure you remember that when you got the fires, you get alarms for it. And out here, it's for dust storms. You cannot see like in front of your hand. It's
Oh.
like we live on Mars. I
Oh
mean,
wow.
it's horrible. Like, you literally, I had to wear like goggles, and I mean, it is
I
so
didn't know
bad.
about that. See, I don't, and then if you're driving or people are having, that'd be really difficult, obviously.
Yeah,
So,
they tell you to pull over because you can't see in front of you.
oh,
So it's, yeah. So and I'm just like, where am I? It's like Dune 4 out here, and Mars. But
and
yeah,
what about, like, would you feel, are there places for you? Because obviously, LA and New York always have things going on, whether it's free or paid. We always have, things. Do you find you've found stuff to do there too?
yeah, because what I do, as soon as I landed here, so to speak, I like had a meeting with the film commission. This is how I am, Tish. I had a meeting with the film commissioner, going, okay, what's El Paso like? What are we doing here? Because like, I had my community in LA, and I still do. I talk to, like, at least every day. I talk to my people, but it's like here I didn't know anybody, so I was like, "Well, what's the filming like?" Da, da, da. And it's up and coming, but so I'm trying to figure out that. And the thing though, everybody's willing to, help. Everyone's really nice out here, and everybody knows everybody in the community.
That's cool.
So that's one thing that I've um, gotten in, and as soon as I got here, I think within I got here in February. In September, I had a photography show for my Viper Room pictures. So
See, that's amazing, and that's where sometimes that, I mean, I remember when you were doing it in LA before you
yeah,
left when you had the show,
yeah,
and but not that you can't. Obviously, you were able to do that, but to do that so quickly, you weren't even there very long. So there's advantages, and plus you can still. And that's what I do, because I always think of LA well, in the last 10 years, kind of as my second home. I don't stay there that long, but before the pandemic, I go about 4 times a year. I have more friends there now than I do in New York, even still, with people leaving. And so you still can go there, but now you have a whole new community, and it is more affordable, realistically, as we build.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm thinking this is just what I'm doing now is trying to figure out what the next move is. Like, I don't. Have you ever been to Joshua Tree? Like, I
I
love Joshua
haven't.
Tree. Oh,
I've heard it's amazing, and I know Graham Parsons that did the whole like tribute to. Yeah, no, I want to. I'd love to go there. I know it's amazing. I have not.
yeah. And that's everyone's like, yeah, but that's desert too. I'm like, no, no, no. That's a different kind of desert than Texas desert. You got California
Oh yeah,
desert,
I
and so it's a
bet.
little bit different. What is the most ridiculous myth or misconception about astrology that you had to just debunk? Just sort of.
Well, I'd say this two parts. So, there are a lot of people obviously that think astrology is you're an Aries, I'm a Scorpio, and you know more about your chart. So it's just they think all, that it's just all for Aries or, that there's much more to it. So that's a misconception that, we're just reading like that. That astrologer just say, hey, Aries is going, there's a lot more to it. But I think more of it is that it could be sacrilegious or that, I grew up, I was raised Catholic, but my mother got a reading before I was born. They were never, they never viewed it. And when I was a kid, my father would get, I would be bored upstate, would spend summers up there and get me astrology scrolls. So the idea is that they were never thinking of it as devil's work. And I can remember I was doing events. I stopped probably about 9 years ago, and one of the last people I read for, I used to do a lot of big events, and I would do an annual New Year's party, and I read for a Catholic priest, and he was probably in his early 60s at the time, and he said, I love astrology. So, do you know what I mean? A lot more people are open-minded, and I just think the idea that, I mean, I'm not doing devil's work or, anything, I don't really come across that very often, to be honest, but had
Good,
this been
good.
60 years ago, maybe I'd hear it more, but that would be, I guess the most extreme.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I get no. I think a lot more people are more open about it, and it's usually like, yeah. I remember growing up, you would just read in the back of a newspaper or magazine, and that's it. All Aries were this one. All
It was
Taurus were the.
King Dixon, and it was like lame, and yeah, and I remember calling the hotline too because I was a little girl, and I why did I need to know about money or love at the age of 9 anyway? But but yeah, you're right. It was so general, and I think Susan Miller changed that landscape because in the late '90s, Astrology Zone would say, "Okay, Christine, this is because the eclipse is in your sign axis, or we have a new moon today. That's a good time for planting new seeds, or Venus and Jupiter are conjunct. Those are the two lucky planets. Go out and have a date or do." So she broke it down, not just because, hey, Aries, you're going to have a good day financially, to say why. I made it more because not everybody knows their time of birth like you or I do. So you may have to base it on the birthday day and year, but you can still say a lot from the cycles of how that's impacting planets or eclipses or other things in the background. How does that impact your planets, even if you don't know your time of birth? So it's a lot more specific than those, yeah, the ones that we knew when we were younger.
Well, and then again, so these all sort of go into one. So, how do you think astrology is evolving? The more we know about the universe, like it's getting bigger. There's more planets or planets that don't have named or anything like that. What? How do you think it's evolving?
Well, I think that question, I thought about that. I don't think it's the astrology is evolving. I think people are evolving, right? So I think people are becoming more conscious because, again, probably 30 years ago, I wouldn't be reading for a Catholic priest. He might not be thinking of it as the devil's work, but he wouldn't necessarily say, I love astrology and get really into it. So I think the idea is that, and even the astrology of experience. So Neptune, which on the higher vibration, every planet and sign has a higher and a lower vibration. And so Neptune on the higher realm represents spirituality. It represents faith. It represents selflessness. It represents the empaths, creativity in its sheerest form. But the idea is that um, Neptune was in Pisces. It just entered your sign. It ingressed into Aries the day after the last eclipse in your sign. So we're seeing a whole different shift, but that's a death and a rebirth right there. But Neptune was in the sign of Pisces from 2011 until now. It's about a 14-year transit. It will dip back into Pisces on October 22nd, and then it leaves altogether in February of next year. But that itself, Neptune is spirituality, it's faith, It's dealing with manifesting, dealing with that part of the alpha part of the brain, or the alpha state of the mind. But I think people becoming more conscious in that way. I just think progressively, and I think now with Pluto and Aquarius, Pluto's been dipping back and forth into Aquarius since March of 2023, and now it ingressed back into Aquarius on November 19th. It's done with the Capricorn story, which was, people in leadership. Well, I'm not going to get too much of that, but it's the old corporations, all of that stuff, the CEOs, the CFOs. In Aquarius, it's the youth, it's the future, it's new beginnings, it's chaos, it's revolutionary energy, but it's also innovative and ingenious energy. So I think with Neptune changing signs, Neptune in Pisces the last 14 years, and almost finishing that up. Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. I think Saturn. I just think progressively the astrology, even in the 60s, this is dipping back in a sense, answering back to the mid 60s with all the revolutionary energy. But think about it. Think of the age of Aquarius was first dubbed in February of 1962. At that time, there were 7 points in Aquarius. And Aquarius, again, the higher vibration, the lower, not lower, more challenging would be becoming more remote and alienated and robotic and having an AI boyfriend or girlfriend, or, there's my cat saying hello to you. And so, but in the 60s, that was more about community. It was young people coming together, fighting for what they thought was social justice. It was a lot about astrology and crystals and different things and metaphysics, but that was a very chaotic time and a different time of history, but bringing more cosmic awareness. So I think we're evolving,
I like that. Yeah, I mean,
I'd like to think that anyway, you know?
yeah, I mean, do you in your spare time, do you learn about different space? Like, are you up to date? Like, oh, they found more black holes, or there's these new planets they found, like or I don't know.
I do a little bit. I'm not major in astronomy. There are some great astrologers, like Gary Katana is one I could recommend. One of my major astrology teachers, who's written several books and is a great astrologer, she also didn't specialize in it, and so not all of us. I mean, I should do more of it, but to be honest, and I do look at it, but it's just like the idea, even Pluto being demoted to a dwarf planet. And Pluto is, out of all the planets, packs the biggest punch. It may be a dwarf planet, but it's no, it's not a dwarf in its effect. It's, as we saw with Saturn and Pluto at the world point, forever changing. Come on, Zane. Forever changing the world. I do. I mean, there's more stuff. I need to be more conscious of it. But to be honest, it doesn't really affect my reading so much. I mean, knowing more, I'm getting more aware. I mean, it's definitely important. I'm not in any way saying it's not. But my clients, when I'm reading their charts and such, and how it pertains, they're not going to want to know about. They want to know what's in it for them. As my friend's ex-girlfriend used to say, "What's in it for me?" She used to say to him. So that relationship didn't last long. But anyway,
How do you see astrology as a tool for navigating existential uncertainty?
I think it's a huge tool. That thing I think is a huge tool because existential uncertainty. And I like that because I was a philosophy major. I've lived a life of existential uncertainty, Christine.
Yeah, well,
So my feeling is that the fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, but in ourselves. And that meaning, what I'm deriving from that Shakespeare quote is that we have decisions and choices. As my friend Georgiana, I have a friend of mine who's a Capricorn, and she studied in LA in the 60s at Houdini's Castle with Carol Richter, who's a very famous astrologer. He was known as the gregarious Aquarius, and Tallulah Bankhead and different old screen actresses would come in, and this is Hollywood, so they would bring in Leo from the studios to show a lion or whatever, but he would always say, which is true, and she reminds me of this, the stars impel, they do not compel. So they impel us, but we have choices. We co-create with this, right? So with that said, I use it as a tool in that we have to understand what's going on. And I teach a class, I teach a beginner to intermediate. It's mostly beginner class right now. It's a great group of people. There's about 10 of us. They come in different, sometimes there's less or more in the room, but as much as they're learning about their charts and, the beginning astrology, I also talk about the major, it's known as mundane astrology, what's impacting all of us, as I do in the videos, because it's important to know, like, if right now Venus is retrograde. Mercury went direct, but it's still in its detriment in Pisces. It's still conjunct Saturn in the North Node. There are fated choices with Saturn involved. But my point is that if you can avoid it, this would be where I'd say to somebody, wait a little bit for the eclipse energy to wane. Wait till Venus clears its shadow, which would be May 16th. Wait till Mercury clears its shadow, which is the end of April. They may not be able to wait to the middle of May, but wait till the planets go direct. Some people may not have that choice, but it's about timing. And if you have really lucky cycles in your chart, when I say, hey, Christine, right now the planets are direct. If Mars were retrograde, I'd say wait, if you can wait, because Mars retrograde, if anything, is probably the worst time to start something new. And with all this financial chaos right now, well, obviously astrologer wasn't consulted, and Carol Richter, I think, was one of Nancy Reagan's astrologers, actually, because they had been in Hollywood. I think one time they actually, and I'm not saying that I side with any parties on this, I'm just saying they had an astrologer. I know one time, I think it was the second time that he was inaugurated, they did it after midnight because the moon was void, and so they didn't want to do it because if the moon's void, it doesn't go into effect. So they waited till the moon was making an aspect. So timing, like if the moon's void, I had a friend that was a Cancer. You have Cancer moon, right? So he was a Cancer sun, and he was in technology. If he wanted to avoid a meeting or delay it, he'd often choose when the moon was void, because he said about 75% of the time it was either canceled or postponed or whatever. So in that way, I mean, generally people want to know the moon is not void so they can make a decision. Or if somebody's telling me I want to get a new job and Mars is retrograde, again, that would be the worst time, unless they lost a job and they have to get something right then. But I have another client that was a restaurateur in LA, had a big restaurant, and I warned him to not open his new business with Venus retrograde. And this was the last Venus star point in Scorpio. That was in fall of 18, and he is a Scorpio, as am I. And unfortunately, he had a very successful business in Melrose. And then when he moved to West Hollywood, it didn't last very long. And he learned that lesson. So we have choices with timing. And if we can work to when, the planets are on our side, or if we're dealing with challenging cycles. And on the mundane level, we certainly are trying to glean the lessons. Right now, there is a tremendous amount of Pisces. And yes, we're in Aries season, and there's a big deal about Aries going on. I'll break that down in a minute. But the Pisces energy, part of that, one of the key words of Pisces is surrender. Listen to your intuition. Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces, and Jupiter is the ancient. And they both deal with faith, and Jupiter is the vision, and Neptune is the dream. I know many of us, I don't think anybody feels they're living a dream, right? They might feel they're living a nightmare, but not many feel they're living a dream. But again, they don't compel the stars. So we can co-create, and Neptune is now at the world point in your sign of Aries. 0 degrees of Aries is the beginning of the zodiac wheel, and it's the beginning of the astrological new year. It's when, the equinoxes occur, when we go through transition. And so on the northern or southern hemisphere. And so with that, this is a degree of creation and new beginnings. Aries is a cardinal sign. You want to take action. You don't want to sit back. And yet your ruler of your sign was retrograde from December 6th through February 23rd. It's still in Cancer, where it initially ingressed on September 1st. It retrograded on December 6th, returned to, it was in Leo as of November 3rd. It opposed Pluto. It's a whole thing with that. But the idea is that when Mars is retrograde, it's a real held back energy. And with all of this energy right now, there's a lot of confusion. You're asking about astrology evolving. a lot of people more than ever, I've noticed with this Aquarius hybrid, this Aquarius Pisces hybrid, is that the Aquarian energy is also about metaphysics. Aquarius rules astrology, alternative ways of healing and thinking. Pisces is more soul based and intuition. It's more about dealing with maybe psychology and therapy and different ways of doing that. There'll be many different ways of it, not just the traditional therapy, obviously. But with all of this, I think we're going to, between the Aquarian part, which is building community, thinking in futuristic ways, and then Pisces, really trying to find new ways to heal ourselves. We have Chiron right now in Aries at the world point, which is 22 cardinal, 0 and 22. Oh, that's your cat, I think I just saw.
Yeah, he's right here.
So I thought that was my, I thought my cat went to your screen for a minute. Aw. So what's your cat's name?
Monk, Monk.
Ah, very cute. So, so what we're seeing is that we're going, not to get too confusing, but the Aquarius Pisces hybrid is showing us that, Saturn in Pisces, that happens approximately every 28 and a half to 30 years. You and I were around, you were at the Viper Room, I believe, 93 to 96, right? That was when Saturn was last in Pisces. Well, Neptune takes 165 years to orbit. So we weren't around, and they better not invent something we're around the next time when it leaves next February altogether. But it is preparing us for Neptune ingressing into Aries, which it did on March 30th. It'll be there through October 22nd. But then Neptune's going back to 29 degrees of Pisces. And that is a degree, it's a fixed star known as Shiat. And right now we have Venus, we've got Saturn, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, and the North Node, all at the last degrees of Pisces, the last 5 degrees. And so 29 degrees of Pisces is the final degree of the zodiac, whereas Aries, 0 degrees of Aries is the first degree. It's a fixed star known as Shiat, which can be connected with self-undoing and suicide. And I don't say that to scare. I say that again, we are aware of that. So if people are struggling with depression, getting into therapy, reaching out to their friends. Neptune just ingressed into Pisces a few weeks ago. Remember, that was when that rock cruise happened with Faster Pussycat and the
Oh
singer's
yeah,
wife, girlfriend jumped off, and then David Hasselhoff's ex-wife took her life, unfortunately, right around that time. And last year it was at that degree from May 4th through September 4th. In that time period, between May 4th and the end of June, I heard of 3 suicides through clients and students, not of people that I know directly, but of people close to them. So we need to be aware. And AA was founded in 1935 when Saturn was in Pisces that time. And at that time, that was in the Great Depression, and they knew even less about mental illness and addiction. So this is where, again, many people have been displaced. We've got many people think of Saturn and Pisces. Well, Pisces is about the arts. If any sign I associate with music, Taurus as well, because it's ruled by Venus. I know you've got Taurus rising, but definitely Pisces too. Pisces music, film, all of that, illusion. And so I think it is a really good navigating tool to understand what we're dealing with on the collective, but also how that is applicable to us. How does that impact your chart or my chart? How do you get more of a broader understanding of the world, but how can you work with it in frustrating times or sometimes having to wait? And Aries don't love to wait. A lot of people don't love to wait. I don't love to wait either, believe me. I've got Mars in my first house. But we sometimes have to. And then, so I think it's a very good timing device, astrology.
wow, 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 wow. See, this is what I'm talking about. You're so thorough and everything when you talk. I'm sure you've gotten asked this question. So, should people look at their sun sign, their moon sign, or their rising when saying when discussing? I mean, or when looking at things, or I mean, what do you, or all three of them?
I mean, like if you look at your horoscope or
Yeah, if
something.
you look at your
So
horoscope,
I
what do
did
they
do.
each differ? How do they each differ? I mean, what's the difference between the three?
I'll tell you the truth. I think that's a little bit subjective. Some people, I don't ever really look at my rising sign. If I'm going to look, which I don't really look that much, but what I did do for a while because I was trying to build my channel, I was doing. I've never been one to be into sun sign astrology because of what we talked about. And then with Susan Miller, I did get into it, like when I was still at the workforce, and I would, on my time off, not during work hours, yeah, my lunch hour or my break, I'd look up my chart. And so look up not my chart, look up what she had to say for Scorpio. But realistically, I didn't really look for my rising sign or my moon sign. But when I started doing for about a year and a half, I was doing the horoscopes for each sign, which had me like a robot. I was memorizing every aspect and then putting it what house, and I was trying to make it as specific as possible. And I sounded like that old FedEx commercial where the guy talked a mile a minute, you know. But I did actually find relevance for myself when I did it because there are astrologers that will, when they do your chart, if they're doing a reading for you specifically, they're going to look at your chart with your time if you know it because you have your Taurus rising or wherever the planets fall, you know. But they're going to maybe initially look at put Aries on the first house, which is solar astrology, and you're the first sign, because that might also show themes you're going through where Pluto might be if you put Aries on the first house, where Pluto just changed signs, where Neptune just would be in your first house because it's in Aries. Venus and all this stuff would be in your 12th and first house because it's Pisces would be your 12th and Aries your first. But I don't look at the other ones, but I know people that do. So I think it really depends on the person. I think that's subjective. But I do feel that some people don't feel very in line with their sign, and they may only have 1 point in their sun sign, and they may have 5 points in the sign before them or after. So they're going to be like my friend is a Virgo, but she's got Leo rising and a bunch of planets in Leo, and I feel she's much more Leo. I mean, she is a Virgo, but she's got very Leo energy. So it really depends. You know what I mean? On that level, I think.
So this is just—it's a silly question. If okay, which zodiac sign would win in a cosmic bar fight and why?
Okay, it is a fun question. And that guy that made me try to say I watched Goodwill Hunting in the movie theater, I told him I'm going to use his sign. So he said mine, which a lot of people would say, well, they probably would say Aries or Scorpio. I would think a lot of people would say Aries because ruled by Mars, or they'd say Scorpio because that's Pluto is the higher octave of Mars, and they'll take you out. But I said, oh no, I'm going to say Libra, which is his sign, because they'll break up the fight, charm you, and then they'll have both opposing parties buying them a beer. Okay, that's his via Libra. There you go, Paul.
But I think also, like, even if you're not into astrology, it's fascinating just to hear you speak, and you're so knowledgeable, and I don't think you have to be or have to read your astrology and everything like that to be into it. You just, it's just like to listen to you is just amazing. I'm just so like, how does she know all this? I don't know. Like, when is your date? When you wake up, how do you just study, or I mean,
I do study a lot. I used to have a very good memory at one point in my life. I think I still do, but when I was a kid, I mean, up until I might have done some things that would damage my memory along the way. Who knows? But I used to have a very good memory, and I still have a good memory. But I think that no, but I do. I study up on it a lot, and I have Moon in Virgo, so I'm not organized physically, but mentally I take lots and lots of notes. So if I'm watching, because I love to watch other astrologers too and other people talking about it, because my dad was in finance, but he'd want to watch other experts too, because we don't know it. Nobody, you want to know what other people, their vantage. We're going to be looking with astrology. We're looking at the same, like with tarot, obviously you're going to pull different cards or something. With astrology, we're looking at the same things, but we have different perspectives, or they may be zeroing on something that I'm not. So when I'm looking at it, though, I have to like stop because I'm taking tons of notes. I never read the notes most of the time, but I think it's just a mental process. I grew up taking notes, so but yeah, I study it a lot. I do. I go through waves, but yeah, I
yeah,
do.
you can tell. Do you do for you? Do you do tarot for you, or do you mess with anything with tarot?
I don't I try to, but that I think tarot for myself would be I've done it, But then if I don't like the answer, like I think you do. But yeah, I don't really do tarot for myself. I with tarot for me, that I don't feel is as much my specialty. So I have clients that I'll do. I do feel if they have specific questions. I have a few clients that do it, but they have specific questions. I don't just lay, like some people are really great when they can lay a spread out and do a whole story. I don't feel that's where I have a lot of finesse. I think I should stick to astrology. But you know what I mean on that, because I could paint a good story on that one. The tarot one's got a lot more followings. Everybody thinks that, you know what I mean. People often think I think the tarot is more of a tool than astrology. I find, but in a way, like you said, you can pick up feelings with tarot. And the thing is, if somebody were to read your cards, you may pull very different cards. You may have the similar message or another message, but with astrology, I'm going to look at the same thing for you. If you're saying what's happening in 28 or what happened in 2017, it's not going to change with the planets war and how it applies to you. And if another astrologer, so in that way, it's a strong reference to me and how, again, it's not saying this is your fate and that's all you can do about it, because we have choices in life. And we got
Yes.
to remember that. That's important to remember too. Well, this was
Oh.
cool. This wasn't as hard as I thought.
No, it's easy peasy. I just, mainly the thing is just for you to relax and talk. And a lot of people feel like it's a life thing, and you got to be like, but it's not. And we edit, and we have
Yeah.
fun time.
Awesome.
All right, my dear. So it was great talking to you.
You too. Oh, there he is. Look.